There is an old Akan aphorism that quotes, "Wukum brekuo ekum akoko nini a, adeche efa wase." To paraphrase and expound in English, when you kill the cuckoo bird and the rooster, the dawning of morning passes beneath you. One has got to be careful in counsel, but wise in the execution of people power when it is given or handed him by popular mandate. In the Akan days of old, the one succeeded to the office of governor, Odikro, a very wicked man, in one of many settlements of Kwayamine, the kingdom in the forest. His name was Kankebi, and whatever he decreed was not to be opposed. No one could raise any reasonable objection against the wishes of Kankebi's rule by tyranny. After 10 years of his rule, it couldn't have been worse for his incapable administration, and the effects visited upon his ruling domain was glaring. Economic and social hardship dictated affairs. Health and wealth was at zero. It was all panic and fear-mongering. And when the wicked governor and his council of incapables met, then as it were in the days of old, they consulted a shaman for good counsel. But this very one was of evil advice and had other motives. This shaman beguiled the whole council with a nefarious agenda. So, the tyrannical resolution meted out was to kill all the old women in the town, for it was determined by the lying shaman that all the old women are witches and were the cause of the town's ill fate. After that, the announcer's gong sounded, and all the townsfolk gathered to hear the news. This was the most unpleasant news ever heard in the history of the kingdom in the forest. It was disheartening, but all challenging, tempting the townsfolk to protest and riot, but with fear of a tyrant's clamp on what he would deem decent. Everyone succumbed to the ilk of Governor Kankebi. In an event of unequaled wickedness ever committed, sad and despicable to watch, all the old women, drawn in a queue as of sheep and cows, were dragged to their slaughter, except one. The irony of it was that after the old woman had been killed, families were brute forced to bury their own, and also there was a prohibition placed upon the whole community, for no one was to weep, wail, or mourn for the dead. There also lived in the same town a young and very courageous hunter whose name was Kofi Fofie. Fofie owed a lot in gratitude to her grandmother, whose name was Efia Adantemo. Efia Adantemo had brought up and trained Fofie from a toddler into a man after the early death of Fofie's mother. Fofie cleaved to an oath not to ever surrender or else betray her grandmother to these evil plotters. So he hatched a plan the night before the morning preceding the murder of the town's old woman and sent her grandmother to hide in the recesses of a grove deep within the forest. He then cooked up a telltale that her grandmother, fearing the executioner's blade, had drowned herself in the river. To cap up his rampage of wickedness, Akan-Teacher announced for a Durbar to be arranged in his honor, and with more grit and audacious antics, he placed a burdensome request upon the young men of the town. A grueling task. The young men were tasked with capturing a live leopard. It took 9 brave-hearted young men to complete the task. A leopard was captured alive and brought to Governor Akan-Teacher. On the morning before midday at which the Durbar began, the leopard was skinned alive and its hide taken to Governor Akan-Teacher to be used as his apparel for the Durbar. Governor Akan-Teacher arrived at the Durbar, followed by a large retinue with pomp and pageant. Led by the elephant horn blowers, amidst the symphony of various groups of Akan drummers, notably the Fontomfrom drummers. With protocols observed and supposed pleasantries exchanged, Governor Akan-Teacher delivered a cold and stiff message that served as a warning to tranquilize the already subdued community and the Durbar atmosphere. He disappeared for a little while, only to reappear in his apparel of leopard hide. This was the climax of the Durbar. The Kete drummers began and Akan-Teacher took center stage as he danced with timely choreography to the sound of the beating drums. To say that the townsfolk were in a state of shock was to understate this situation, as they watched an evil man gesturing skillfully and fiercely looking with dance moves that carried the message, "The leopard is the owner of the forest." He danced his whole evil heart till sundown, when he retired to his residence. But there and then, Governor Akan-Teacher couldn't slip out of his apparel because the leopard hide was stuck to his body. There was nothing he could do immediately about, as it seemed that to force the hide off his body would be tantamount to the peeling of his own skin. The news spread through town to the astonishment of people, but most of them were withdrawn to pronouncing judgment. An offer was made to reward the person who would come up with a way to remove the leopard hide firmly stuck to the Odikro's flesh with a half share of Ken Kebi's governorship. A full week had elapsed and nobody was able to find a remedy to Ken Kebi's agony of his flesh. Efiadantemo had realized an unusual sluggishness creep into the always alert nature of his hunter grandson during his visits to the forest grove where Kofi Fofie hid her. Fofie felt reluctant to tell her grandmother about the ongoing issue. But when she sensed Fofie was holding back, he told the whole story of Ken Kebi's misfortune. Governor Ken Kebi was placed on a stool in public, and children were asked to fetch water from a stream and pour it onto the Odikro, soaking wet. Then the children set forth to peel the leopard hide from the skin of Ken Kebi. This was the simple and effective instruction Efiadantemo issued to Kofi Fofie. After that, Fofie was asked how he worked out this remedy, and he point-blankly told the truth about how and what he did to save her grandmother from execution. Governor Ken Kebi, now resigned to his fate, ordered an escort to accompany Fofie to bring back Efiadantemo, the old woman, Aberewa, from the deep forest. In finding a way of restoring emotional equilibrium, most witnesses were in tears of joy. The moment Efiadantemo, the old woman, Aberewa, entered the town. Ken Kebi divided his governorship into two halves and gave a portion away to Fofie, and Adantemo played the role of a bridge between the two halves. Whenever any misunderstanding arose, the two halves of governors held it prudent to seek the counsel of the old woman. In the passage of time, it became a customary practice to seek the counsel of the old woman pertaining to all matters of state among all Akans. Thus the saying, Yenko bisa Aberewa. Don't we reap exactly what we sow? This story is a unique example of how truth shall always prevail over falsity and good over evil. It also points out that the key to one repenting of their folly, in this instance wickedness, is to forgive them by showing them the right way.